There's a moment in life when you look at a problem and think, I don't have what it takes. If you've ever felt too small, too unqualified, or too overwhelmed, then Gideon's story is for you. It is a story where God takes the weakest man in the weakest family and uses him to defeat an army that looked impossible to overcome. Today, we're retelling that story, not as a sermon, but like you're sitting across the table hearing it from a friend. This is the story of GIDEON'S 300. Picture this. A young man is crouched inside a winter press. Not to make wine, but to secretly thresh wheat. Why? Because the Midianite army is terrorizing his nation. They steal crops, burn farms, and leave Israel starving. And Gideon, he's just trying to survive. He's not a warrior. He's not a leader. He's not the guy anyone would choose for battle. He's afraid. And honestly, who wouldn't be? It's in that fear, in that hiding place, that something unexpected happens. A messenger of God appears and says words Gideon never saw coming. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Gideon probably looked around like, who, me? Because sometimes God calls us something long before we see it in ourselves. Gideon's first response isn't courage. It's doubt. He says, my family is the weakest, and I am the least in my family. In other words, I'm not strong enough. I'm not important enough. I'm not chosen. Maybe you've felt that too. But God doesn't argue with Gideon. He simply says, I will be with you. Sometimes God doesn't make us bigger. He just reminds us we're not fighting alone. Gideon agrees to follow, but he asks for signs, confirmations, proof. And God, patiently, gives them, because God is not intimidated by human doubt. He meets us in it. Gideon finally gathers an army. 32,000 men show up. Still far less than the Midianites, but at least it's something. But then God says something shocking. You have too many men? Too many. They're already outnumbered. But God knew something. If Israel won with a big army, they'd think they did it themselves. So God reduces the army. First, anyone afraid is allowed to go home. 22,000 men leave. Now Gideon has only 10,000. But God says again, still too many. So he gives Gideon a strange test at a river. Only 300 men make the final cut. From 32,000 down to 300. Imagine the silence that night. Imagine how small the camp looked. Imagine Gideon looking at his tiny army and thinking, this doesn't make sense. But sometimes, God's plan won't make sense until you see the ending. That night, God tells Gideon, get up. Go down to the enemy camp. I want you to hear something. So Gideon goes quietly to the edge of the Midianite camp, and he overhears two soldiers talking. One says, I had a dream. A loaf of bread rolled into our camp and crushed a tent. The other replies, this can only mean one thing, God has given Gideon victory. Gideon hears this and something changes inside him. Fear melts. Courage rises. His heart steadies. Because sometimes the thing that pushes you forward is hearing what the enemy knows about your destiny. Now comes the strategy. No swords. No chariots. No massive weapons. Just a torch, a clay jar, and a trumpet. This doesn't look like a battle plan. It looks like a worship service. But that's the point. At Gideon's signal, they break the jars, the torches blaze, the trumpets blast, and they shout, for the Lord and for Gideon. The Midianite camp explodes in panic. In the chaos, they turn on each other. By the time it's over, the enemy is defeated, and Gideon's tiny army of 300 never even had to swing a sword. Because when God fights for you, your weakness becomes the stage for his strength. Gideon's story is not just about war. It's about identity, purpose, and trust. It's a reminder that God can use the smallest people to accomplish the biggest victories. He sees courage in you, even when you only see fear. And he will sometimes reduce what you have so you learn who your victory really comes from. Gideon thought he was hiding from life, but God was calling him into destiny. And maybe, just maybe, God is calling you too. This is the story of GIDEON'S 300. The day God used the weak to defeat the mighty. Thanks for watching.